Should we paddle around New Zealand?
Yeah, why not?
We are James and Fi.
And this is our story.
New Zealand, two major islands lying in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean.
In 2015, we had the most incredible adventure kayaking around the South Island.
2 years later, we returned to paddle the other half.
Surrounding the North Island is some of the most incredible coastline in the world. However, to date, there are only a couple of sea kayakers that have paddled the whole coastline. The North Island's exposed location, all alone in the South Pacific Ocean, combined with the topography of the coastline, give rise to some huge challenges for a sea kayaker.
Such as strong winds, committing coastline, and relentless surf. What had really sucked us in was the level of challenge and the fact that success was truly unknown.
What we did know was that we were definitely going on a pretty cool adventure.
The surf's massive, it's very scary, we have absolutely no options but to land here.
This was all the food we had left. We had nothing else.
Nearly 23 hours.
We're absolutely knackered. Our tent is well and truly destroyed.
Fuck, that's good. Some big breakers and I've lost James. I'm a little bit terrified right now. I literally don't know where he is.
We knew it would be tough and that we probably had quite a lot to learn.
Paddling the South Island already taught us many valuable lessons already. Sadly, through misadventure, with the even bigger reputation of the North Island, we knew we had to up our game. British winter boating was on the menu for us, with hours spent in the blistering cold and wind, breaking through lines of surf to then return to the beach through cartwheeling, pirouetting, bongo sliding, and even a clean surf every now and again.
We made sure our skills were as solid as they could be and taught ourselves a huge amount more about the sea. What size waves were possible to survive in a sea kayak? 6 foot, 8 foot, 12 foot? We pushed each other on and most definitely found our limits. Better found here, I guess, than mid-expedition on New Zealand's west coast.
When people heard what we were training for, they thought that we were going on a cruisy summer holiday, or even more correctly, that we were insane and were probably going to die. That didn't stop us, because we just wanted to give it a go. Before we knew it, we had ordered 2 credit cards, bought some tickets to New Zealand and landed in Auckland. We started at Mission Bay. We chose this location because of it's closest to the airport and its name. So there we were. It hadn't even been 24 hours since we landed. We were jet lagged but getting into our boats.
We were eager to get going, but setting off into the unknown was also a pretty terrifying moment. As we took our first few paddle strokes and turned right, neither of us really knew if we would actually make it back to this beach. Oh well, there's no turning back now. Let's just give it our best shot.
Our first section was the amazing Coromandel coast, an inspiring beginning with views of volcanic cliffs and remote beaches. Landings were simple, weather was sunny, and the winds non-existent.
Sadly, high pressures can't last forever.
One of those days.
The
The skies were now greyer, the seas more lively, and the headwind stronger.
It was time to make our first hard decision of the trip.
Morning. It's pretty crazy out there. We're trying to work out what to do. Southwesterly, 25 knots, which you never know, could be more. There's lots of white caps.
It's quite a committing coastline. We kind of got, once we get around one of the next points, there's no landings and lots of reefs all over the shop. So, might be quite epic. Might be alright. But, we'll only know once we get out there, I guess.
If we picked the safe option every time, we would never get round, so we decided to go for it.
And it's sunny! And we're moving the way we want to go! And it's pretty epic!
We were flying, covering near 20 kilometres in 2 hours. A great tailwind and constantly surfing down the waves. These are the ultimate sea kayaking conditions. As planned, we were paddling about a kilometre offshore to avoid the reefs. We felt completely in control of the conditions and our plan.
Nearing a prominent headland, we could see that the reefs were extending much further offshore than was marked on our maps. We quickly had to make the decision to point our boats out to sea and power past them. Suddenly, the winds rose. We didn't know how much more we could handle. Even taking our hands off our paddles was becoming very dangerous. Ahead of us was a long section of steep cliffs with zero landing opportunities. We had a quick look at the map and made a frantic decision to head to shore whilst we still could.
Oh my god! It got really epic! We're just about to crash land on this beach! Fingers crossed!
Once committed to paddling in through the breakers, there was no turning back. It was pretty difficult to manoeuvre my fully laden kayak in these conditions. Large rocks with waves crashing were appearing all over the place. Getting caught with a wave dumping me onto a rock could have easily been the end of my fiberglass boat.
I'm sorry, boat!
I managed to make it to the shore before Fi, only to realise that in our haste we had landed on the wrong beach that had no water source, and behind the layer of trees was just steep, crumbly cliffs, so we couldn't escape. As I watched Fi dive from her boat into waist-high water, I wasn't really sure how to break the news to her.
Right, so we had our epic crash landing through this stuff. And then we realised we weren't at the beach that we thought we were at the map, and there's no river and there's nowhere to camp. It goes right up to the cliffs. So we're going to have to head out through the surf and land on the next beach round. Here's James braving it first. Go on, James.
Just as James rounded the rocky point and went out of sight, he gave me the OK signal with his paddle.
It was now my turn. As I smashed out into the surf and roaring wind, I rounded the point and turned my boat into shore. I was now committed to heading in through whatever lay ahead, as the strong onshore wind blew me forwards. I had no choice but to do the best job I could of reacting to the maze of rocks that appeared between me and the sand.
Oh my god! Oh my god! It's good now that I've landed.
So we made it. It was pretty mental out there. So loads of rocks. But we've finally got to the bay.
I feel a little bit dazed.
Yeah.
Dazed in the wind.
But we found some water.
We found a big old waterfall.
So that was a pretty sketchy day. But yeah.
Exciting, but very sketchy. Anyway.
After a short break, we were able to carry on down the east coast.
Spirits were high. Scenery was cool. And campsites were awesome.
I leave paint trails as I go. I'm painting a picture.
Well, that was a good day today. We flew like 1,000,000 miles an hour, but we can't really go any further.
As we headed down the coast, we could tell the shoreline was getting dry and dusty. New Zealand was in a summer drought, which brought its own set of problems.
We nicknamed this stretch Sandland. The cool views of the sandy cliffs from our kayaks were definitely an impressive sight. But
And now we're on the beautiful search to try and find some water. And as you can see, there's not much.
The only way we could gather enough water to drink was by digging pits in the riverbed. When enough murky liquid had gathered, we drank it down. Our only rule was if we could see through it, it was good to go.
after weeks in Sandland, we were finally nearing the first big river on our map. We were excited to land and have a drink of clear water and finally have a proper wash. But as we landed, we found a different surprise waiting for us.
That's insane! You fucking muppet! No idea! No idea you were here!
Some friends from home surprised us. They hunted us down utilising our GPS updates and a van with a pair of binoculars. They brought us fresh food and beer, which was amazing.
We stayed up late excitedly chatting and had a brilliant night. But as always, good things never last.
It's pretty epic inside the tent today.
Our tent is well and truly destroyed. Must be gusting more than like...
I don't even know. It's like it's worse here than Cairngorm Plateau in the winter.
We peered out of our broken tent and watched the 60-knot winds whip out to sea. Sometimes the decision to stay on land is easy. As we were wondering what to do, our friends had walked back to find us, to find two blobs covered in the remnants of a tent. Every single pole had snapped and ripped the outer. It was not really a tent anymore.
They felt guilty leaving us in that condition, so they took us out and got us some essential supplies and gifted us a new tent, and then they were gone. We spent the rest of the day alone, just watching the windy madness.
As the winds calmed, we continued to make progress south. We were now more exposed to the incoming large swells.
Passing Honeycomb Rock on the southeast coast was definitely a day to remember. All day we've been keeping far offshore with huge surf pounding the coast. As the day went on, it hadn't eased, and we were getting more and more concerned of how we would land.
So we've been paddling on the water for 12 hours. We're both pretty knackered. And there was a big swell, but the forecast said it was going to ease, but it hasn't eased, and basically the surf is massive. And there's this westerly sun, so we can't even see the beach. It's just, yeah, really scary. Yeah, what do you think? Oh, we don't really have any options. There's going to be surf everywhere. And it's massive. Have a look at the map. There's nowhere sheltered on this coast.
I suppose it is literally just going to have to...
This is it. You're just going to have to
be careful.
get a bit sick.
We decided to head in one at a time. I went first, leaving James alone in the big swell. I was well over a kilometre offshore as I nervously started to paddle in, heading towards the white spray I could see up ahead. Eventually I neared the braking zone, and I knew I had to get this bit right.
Holy fucking shit!
That was scary, and those waves were much, much bigger than the camera made them look. The height of the waves were easily the length of our 16-foot sea kayaks. I was terrified, but we had no option. I had made the quick decision after the last two massive waves passed to start sprinting for the beach. There was no going back now. Charging into shore, I was now in the most dangerous area where the waves break. I was continuously scanning around and behind me for signs of another set. If I had misjudged it and they appeared now, I'd be screwed. Heart in mouth, I had continued to fully commit to the sprinting.
Oh, fuck!
The set had started to come. Monster waves were breaking behind.
Fuck, that's good.
My heart was pounding, and I hoped I had made it far enough ahead of the break zone. As I carried on in, rocks and reefs were now starting to appear all over the place. Training was paying off. Or maybe it was just a huge amount of luck. I'm not sure. But I had missed most of the bad places and was almost there. But I now recognised the last hurdle. A 45-degree angled beach with a final line of steep dumping waves crashing onto it hard and immediately sucking out with speed. My least favourite kind of landing ever. Getting trashed and missed would be horrible. Quickly digging my paddle in and jumping out of my boat, I was so relieved my legs were on land.
I've got you! Get the fuck out!
My landing was probably a little bit more scary than Fi's, but I wasn't wearing a GoPro, so nobody cares. Luckily, she was there waiting to help me get out my boat.
That was terrifying! That rock! Put it there.
Can we get my boat up?
As we continued down the exposed southeast coast, we had been on the sea for a month. We were 6k from Cape Palliser, the southeasternmost point of New Zealand. Our weather forecasts had been odd over the last week. Forecasts of 60-knot winds that never seemed to appear. I still can't put my finger on it, but as we neared the Cape, despite the weather being fine, we both had a weird feeling as a small white puff cloud appeared over the mountain. We decided to land. About 10 minutes later, the weather had turned fierce. If we had detoured out to sea to round the Cape and got caught in this offshore wind, it would have been bad.
It's going up in the air, look at that! What's the tornado? I be on top of a mountain in the winter. Epic. Yeah, literally as soon as we got off the sea, crazy offshore winds came, like really, really strong. And
We were stuck for 7 days and found shelter deep in the short, dense trees. Our days consisted of watching the sea and collecting firewood to save our dwindling fuel supply. Our only interaction with the outside world was a daily 2-hour walk to a lighthouse to get a weather forecast from our radios.
And the weather's kind of really crazy, so the forecast is just so crazy. It's kind of 30 knots, 50 knots, 40 knots, 20 knots in all different directions.
Each morning we would wake up with hope at 5 a.m. to see if we could get on the water. We watched offshores change to onshores in the space of a few hours, quickly building huge swells.
We should have got on yesterday when the waves were slightly bigger but the wind was a bit less. Feeling really demotivated right now. This is probably like the hardest point of the expedition for me so far.
We waited for 7 days till finally we saw a window to punch through the surf.
It felt great to be back in our kayaks moving forward, and finally we rounded Cape Palliser.
Past the fucking lighthouse we go.
As we started up the west coast, it was clear that our encounters with extreme New Zealand weather systems had only just begun.
I think we're going backwards! We literally are going backwards! This is shit.
I was past that rock and now I'm already back here. That was like less than a minute.
Yeah, we're actually going backwards.
So we're
This is
about
ridiculous.
we're about here. We've only gone 2k in an hour and it feels like it's getting stronger if anything.
Yeah.
So I think we should head to that point again when we had lunch.
Should we head back to there and figure out a plan?
Yeah, it's
Well-
just relentless. There's no point. It's just a waste of time.
It's literally relentless, isn't it? Right. Back we go! Let's get round the other way around the island.
Continuous 30-knot headwinds blew down the coast, and we were forced to stay on land. Occasionally the winds would drop and we could sneak some miles in. This often meant launching at night through the surf and only managing a few hours before the winds would stop us. But our motivations were as high as they could be.
We were sometimes stuck for days on gorgeous beaches which we quickly made our home.
Locals were always interested in our existence on their beaches, and news of the two salty English kayakers would rapidly spread. Many would come and see us, bringing us food, water, and even welcoming us into their homes. We made some great friendships and were amazed at the generosity of everyone.
This is Bill. He's an 80-year-old fisherman and a complete legend. That one over there, yeah.
My house is down there. Today we've got a new keel strip because we drag it in the water and it wore it out enough.
Oh, so you had to fix it, yeah.
So put another one on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's how we bring the wood along the beach, some logs. Here's a log we got.
Bill did everything he could to help us out, from telling us epic fishing stories that made us smile, to giving us a bed and a shower for a few nights, to letting us use his tools to fix our broken paddle.
We couldn't stay with Bill forever and continued to creep up the coast. During our downtime, we took the opportunity to fix our battered kit and our battered bodies. So obviously expeditions aren't always glamorous and there's some hard parts to expedition. Some of that is, for me, the chafe. I get really bad chafe and it's really not good. So I was going to show you some of that because everyone wants to see that. So basically it's in a really bad position, so I'm going to try not to hopefully not show you anything you don't want to see. But basically it's just there. It goes all the way around and it's really sore to touch. I've got it also on my other side. So even the basic thing of taking down your underwear to go to the toilet or getting changed is very painful, and that rubs every second of the day as I'm paddling, so that's always good. I also have it under my armpits, so that's lovely. So basically we've had 2 good days after being stormbound for a long time. Did like 60k days, and we're now on this beach. The wind's already probably quite strong. We're very sheltered where we're sitting right now. If you walk down to see it, it's really big. So we'll probably be stuck for 2 days because the surf's going to get up to 19 foot. We'll try and record some of that and show it to you later. Things could be worse though, because we got met by a lovely lady called Donna and her friends and family, who we met actually at Cape Palliser, and they've brought us loads of treats, including some venison. So for breakfast we're having venison wraps, which is pretty luxurious. So I'm going to try and do my Jamie Oliver skills and cook us up a nice meal. But yeah, bye really.
Life could be worse, eh?
From Cape Palliser, it had taken us a month to crawl up the southwest. It was hard work, but now we were rounding the bulge of Taranaki and starting the more exposed section of the west coast.
It's turned to pea soup mist out here. Quite a big swirl, quite a lot of breakers. A little bit worrying, you can't really see where you are. And we're right on the southwest tip that we're rounding. It's all good.
As soon as we passed New Plymouth, the constant headwinds suddenly turned to gentle tailwinds that pushed us past stunning rocky cliffs. We enjoyed mega sunsets as Maori dolphins played in the swell around us. No longer were we confined to short distances, but we were able to complete whopping 60 to 70k days back to back. The reason for the long days was mostly because there was nowhere safe to land. The surf was always large and broke roughly a k away from shore.
In all honesty, every morning we felt physically sick at the thought of having to break through this surf. There were times and places that the waves were big enough to do serious damage if we mistimed our exit. Our hard efforts training in the surf back home were paying off. It was always an awesome feeling once we were both finally out the back of the surf.
But as we paddled, we constantly kept an eye on the right, knowing that at the end of the day we'd have to battle our way back to the beach. The surf wasn't the only problem though.
So basically, yesterday we landed through easy-ish surf. We started moving our boats up, and then those cows on the hill over there they started coming down to the beach and chased us into the sea. So we were standing in the sea for probably about an hour with them standing there until I started shepherding them like a dog, throwing sand and going and then they kind of got wise to that, but at least we had a bit of room to climb up over the hill, get over a fence, and then get to our kayaks and move our kayaks.
We've been, there's some feral cows trying to charge us, and they've surrounded our boat, and we're now cowering in the sea from them, and I don't really know what to do.
They were definitely scarier than the camera makes them look. After that little incident, progress continued, and we soon reached what we believed to be the crux of the entirety of New Zealand. We had two major harbours to cross, the Manukau and the Kaipara, regarded as two of the most treacherous harbours in the southern hemisphere. We have tried to do some research about the waters, but apart from unreliable nautical charts and news reports of deaths and accidents, there wasn't much information available. We had only heard horror stories when we had quizzed the fishermen, and the Coast Guard's response when we had asked for advice was just not to attempt it.
Well, I haven't done 150 rows yet.
Our first try to head miles out to sea to avoid the massive breakers had failed as the tide had turned early. Now we were being sucked towards bigger waves.
These breakers are pretty big though, on the right now.
We made a good call to head back to the harbour and wait for another chance.
So we've been stuck here for a couple of days with weather that we could probably have left, but the weather forecast wasn't looking great. We're kind of making the decision now that it's time to go really. It's pretty strong offshore winds, but that means with the swell and the tide going out, the Manukau Harbour is kind of flattened off, so we're going to try and go for it. We've got to be quite quick because this thing can change quite quickly, so basically it's all systems go.
So, it's very windy and we're about to go out to the Manukau Harbour. You're right. A little bit nervous right now.
We're going to stay close to the shore so we can always do a crash landing if we need to. So.
Yeah, we can always crash land. Yeah.
Right.
See ya.
We were definitely nervous as we headed out. We had been studying the harbour closely for the last few days from high up on a hill. We could spot a channel clear of breakers that would seem to form on the ebb. It was easy to see from land, but definitely felt a lot more intimidating when in amongst it.
Shit, there's a big one over there! A big one just broke over there! Just to the left of you! There's some random breakers up ahead! Are we gonna go left of them or...? Right, I think 5 minutes and we'll be past the worst of it! Oh, we made it!
Only a day later and we were nearing our next challenge, the Kaipara Harbour, nicknamed by the locals as the boat graveyard.
Even large motor-powered vessels rarely risk crossing the harbour mouth. It has a fearsome reputation. But we had a plan of action this time. It's about 15k from shore to shore across the harbour mouth. Huge west coast swells and strong tidal currents cause sandbars to constantly form and shift. These sandbars produce large breakers and form an unknown distance out to sea, in quite often random places. The plan was to detour about 6 or 7 kilometres offshore and fully miss any of the breakers that form this boat graveyard.
So we're in the middle of the Kaipara harbour crossing. We're about 6k offshore. To our right, way over there, are the big breakers they call the graveyard, but we're way over 6k offshore because we don't want to go anywhere near it. some big breakers, and I've lost James. About 20 minutes I've been paddling up and down looking for him, and there's no sign of him. Last saw him going for a piss near the breakers, so I'm a little bit terrified right now. I literally don't know where he is.
Because the weather was so perfect, we switched off a little and I decided to stop and relieve myself. The tide was sucking into the harbour, and even with only a few minutes of non-paddling, I was separated from Fi. I frantically scanned the horizon looking for her, but I couldn't see anything, not even a paddle flash. Below me I could see a massive sandbank. This was a really bad place to be. If a wave formed, I'd be toast. I sped up and quickly made a plan. All I could do was try and get to the camping spot we talked about the night before, and hope for the best.
Luckily, after being a bit worried, I had come to the same conclusion. We landed at the same beach, found each other, had a quick hug, and got back on it. When the weather was good, we had to keep going. Waking up way before light, doing back-to-back 80k days was awesome, but definitely tiring. Mornings seem to generally be the hardest time.
About 5:30 in the morning, and I'm really tired, but we've got another 80k or something day to do today. Good morning. Are you really excited today?
So excited. So we had a good day today. We paddled pretty far, and then the conditions look like this. And for the west coast, that is unheard of, really, to have.
Pretty much once in a year,
Yeah.
this well is this low.
So we've decided a weird thing, that we've just had some dinner and we're going to get back on the water and paddle another 40k into dark till about between 2 and 4, and land. So then if we land there, it means that we've got an awesome the place we want to get to means we've got an awesome shoot off, so we can actually get around the top.
So from tomorrow, the swell's picking up and the northerly winds are picking up, so we want to just get there. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's a good idea.
You think so?
I think it'll probably be okay.
Oh well.
Kind of like a game of fortunately and unfortunately. It's like, fortunately, the weather's really nice. Unfortunately, it's 1:30 in the morning. Fortunately, we have chocolate bars. Unfortunately, it's not really enough.
We've been paddling for 21 hours. That's quite a lot of hours. That's the most hours I've ever paddled for. We've run it for 21 hours. And it's impossible to tell where we are because it's just one long, endless, undulating sand dune. It's now hissing down with rain. It's clouded in, visibility is about 200 metres. It's complete crap. Remind me never ever again to paddle for 24 hours. We reach land. The sun has risen again.
So it's 8 o'clock in the morning. We landed about half an hour ago.
We've paddled for nearly 23 hours.
We're absolutely knackered. It's okay though, because we're here. And at the moment, it's completely flat. But we're going to have like 2-3 days of bad weather coming in, and then the swell's big, so we might be here for like 4 days. 4 or 5 days, so we'll be able to recuperate.
So it was a good idea in the end. For about 4 hours near the end, from 3:30 onwards, it was the worst idea in the world. And
never been this sore in my life sea kayaking. We did 80k yesterday as well, so we've done well over 100k today. Oh my god. So we're eating about 100 grams of fat.
Yeah, we need some kind of haven to
Yeah,
restore our muscle. But anyway, the plan for today, set up our tent, and then go into town with food. It's my birthday tomorrow, so we need to get some beers for tomorrow.
Plan is to eat lots of food and drink lots of beer and not get sick for a while.
That's about it really. Hopefully next time I speak to you we'll be a bit more alive. Right.
After a little bit of rest, we were off up the last part of the west coast. Cape Reinga, here we come.
As we got closer to the point, we saw a fishing boat. This was the first boat, apart from ourselves, we'd seen on the whole sea of the west coast. It was a little bit exciting, and I found myself sprinting towards them. They were as shocked to see us as we were to see them.
We're going round the whole North Island.
Especially when that was my answer.
So we started in Auckland. We're almost done now. We've gone down past Wellington, up the flipping west coast. And now we're almost done with the west coast, so yeah.
They gave us some awesome local information about rounding the point and told us where they'd be moored up that night with a promise of fresh crayfish and beer.
Off we paddled, and before we knew it, we were at that dot on our map that we had been dreaming of rounding for months.
Cape Reinga, the northernmost point of New Zealand, where the east coast meets the west coast and the two oceans meet. Rounding the Cape was a really incredible moment. For the first time in months, we were now sat on the east coast on a swellless sea.
We made it round, we've done it. That's
Finally got round. Good to be here on the east coast technically.
yeah. And we've been offered by some cray fishermen to stay on their boat with them tonight, which is just in Splits Bay, which is about 2 hours away, where they can give us beer and lobster for dinner. So I think I'm going to go for it. Hello! Thank you, holiday.
The two fishermen lugged our boats on board, shoved a beer in our hands, and we had a brilliant night we won't forget, full of music, beer and crayfish.
This is the end of the expedition. This is James being eaten by crayfish. There's a what?
Eagle ray. Yeah, little ray. Not a manta, it was an eagle ray. Just swam past.
Like one of those kind of like what we call man ray.
Nah,
little
not
tiny.
a manta,
Yeah.
Eagle ray. Eagle ray. Different.
Yeah. But like one of the ones that
They
go.
still fly.
Yeah.
We had quite a lot to drink.
Tiny little fish.
What's going on, but now I know I better sleep in on my own.
So cool that flying fish.
It's so cool just to watch the
It
ecosystem.
literally looks like an airplane.
And he just sits here right in front of us, you know? Like
Yeah.
posing. Gangster. Showing off. Yourself.
Sadly, we couldn't stay drunk with the fishermen forever. We had an expedition to complete. At 5 AM, they needed to go and collect their cray pots, and we were launched back into the sea to start the next chapter of our expedition. For most of the west coast, we were often a kilometre offshore to avoid the breakers. We now had a flat, calm sea,
and were able to get right up to the incredible coastline. For the last few months, everything from eating to going to the toilet had been done out on sea. Landing was either impossible or seen as a massive faff. We treated ourselves to our first landing lunch break. It was pretty cool. Our only issue this day was that our boats must have stank of crayfish, and we were continuously stalked by bluefin sharks. Apart from that, it now felt like we were on holiday and nothing could stop us. We were tired and slightly hungover from last night with the fishermen, so we decided to land early on a beautiful remote sandy beach and chill out. We found it funny and made some jokes about our gnarly 1-foot surf landing. This may have been our most stupidest decision of the trip.
The surf was a little bigger than 1 foot when we woke up the next morning. I'm not sure what size they were out there, but all I know was that there was waves for as far as the eye could see.
We're in the absolute middle of nowhere. There were no roads for miles and miles and miles. It was just us and the wild horses for company.
We realised that some people would spend lots of money to be on a beach this secluded, big and beautiful. So we decided just to relax and enjoy each other's company off the water. These are some of my fondest memories of the trip.
Join us now for the final of beach paddle golf. This is Fiona, hopeful young new starter. If she gets this shot within 2, she's won the championship. If she gets in 3, another hole will need to be played. And if she gets in 4, well, James has won. Or a bit of a hook shot that time.
The surf's massive out there today. Not a chance we're going to get on our kites. We'll just get annihilated. So we're just enjoying chilling out in the sea. Beautiful place.
Our honeymoon would have to come to an end soon enough.
Because this was all the food we had left. We had nothing else. We had nothing to go with it. A couple of porridge oats, but that was it. Just pasta and porridge oats. And with pasta, that was probably about 2 meals worth. So yeah, we definitely needed to get some food.
The surf had dropped enough to be manageable. It was still a little scary though. We estimated the outer set of waves were about 1 kilometre offshore. They were all breaking in a steep dumping nature, where the wave unleashes all its power at once. Getting wiped out could do some serious damage. We'd spent a long time sat on the cliffs studying the ocean. There were 4 lines of waves to escape through. The waves would break, roll, then fizzle out into a rolling swell again, most likely formed by sandbars on the ocean's floor. There are obvious lines between sets, and obvious places we could sit and wait between the lines of breakers. For the last day on land, we would see if we could guess the safe time to sprint between the sets. We got pretty good at this, and now reckoned we could definitely leave without getting munched.
Woo! Finally! Technically I was upside down, yeah. Boy, did you roll? Yeah, what did you get out?
Yeah, I managed to tie it very well.
Yeah, me too.
I think.
Ah!
8 all. 8 all.
We were now on a roll on the final part of our trip down the northeast coast. Not to let our guard down again.
Take to the sky. Open up your eyes and see how far you get in just one day.
Wow!
Take to the sea and open up your heart and see how far you get atop this breeze.
Suddenly, our attitude had changed. No longer were we obsessed of getting the big days in, because we knew we could easily make it in time. So we got in close to the rocks, explored the cave, had breaks for lunch, and if the weather was bad, we just
so
rested.
we could go find things we'd never seen.
If the winds were blowing, we would land and explore remote, uninhabited and beautiful islands.
Climb all the trees up to the top and see all that your eyes
Absolutely epic.
take the lead out to the streets as far as your lungs will carry you atop your feet. And it's the only time, it's the only time for you to be.
The last night, hopefully. We got one more day tomorrow that shouldn't be that big, but it's time to go home.
Done it.
But right now, we've got this as our last night. London.
So it's day 97 and we still have this weird desire to get up at 4:30 in the morning in the dark. The final day! Feels a bit like Christmas. We might actually finish the trip today. Quite exciting.
Let's go morning.
Before long, we were nearing the volcano of Rangitoto, the island that we could see when we set off, that we wondered if we would ever make it back to. The finish was now only a few kilometres beyond. As we paddled the final miles, our thoughts wandered to all the things we had seen and done over the last 97 days.
It might seem like this is all ending quite abruptly, but that's what it's like on a long expedition. You spend your whole time thinking about the end, for it then to be over, and all you can do is think about being back on the sea.
Hats and on toes, coats and sleeping bags. I come to know that memories were the best things you ever had. The summer shore, deep down on Bowman back, so far from home, where the ocean stays and dust and pine home.
How much does something mean? Okay?
We slept like dogs down by the fireside, awoke to the fog were all around us. The boom of summer.
The paddling was great, the coastline amazing, but what really blew us away the most were the remarkable people we met along the way. Many who went far out of their way to help us in some form or another. From helping us hitchhike to shops, to giving us a beer, to letting us use your shower. I don't think anybody actually realised how much help your little gesture actually meant to our journey.
The old pine fair we sang, just to bless the morning. Hats and on toes, coats and in sleeping bags. I come to know the friends around you are all you'll always have. Smoke in my lungs, or the echoed stone. Careless and young, free as the birds that fly, with weightless souls. good, steady as the stars in the woods. So happy heart.